I am Edward Teach, though history knows me as Blackbeard. Let me tell you how a Bristol sailor became the most feared pirate in the New World, and why the legends they tell barely touch the truth of what I was. My early life? Some say I was born in Bristol, others in London or even Carolina. I'll keep that mystery. A pirate's power lies partly in what people don't know about him. What matters is that I went to sea young, as most sailors did, during Queen Anne's War. Privateering taught me everything I'd need to know about legal piracy, about how thin the line was between state-sanctioned theft and outright brigandage. The year 1713 changed everything. The war ended, and thousands of privateers suddenly found ourselves unemployed. The Crown expected us to tamely accept merchant wages after years of prize money. The Caribbean beckoned. A world of weak Spanish colonies, rich merchant ships, and endless places to hide. Let me tell you about Benjamin Hornigold, who made me what I became. I joined his crew in New Providence, learned the pirates' trade under his command. He saw something in me, a natural authority, a way of frightening people into submission without always needing violence. Fear, he told me, is cheaper than powder and shot. I learned fast. Within 2 years, I was commanding my own sloop under Hornigold's guidance. We worked together. His ship would chase a merchant vessel from one direction, mine from another. Few resisted. Those who did learned why resistance was unwise. The legends about my appearance? I crafted them deliberately. I grew my black beard long, braided it, wove ribbons and small fuses into it. During battle, I'd light those fuses, the smoke wreathing my face, making me look like a demon from hell. Wide-brimmed hat, rows of pistols across my chest, glass bottles filled with powder that smoked like witches' brews, everything designed to terrify. Let me tell you about my first great prize, the French slave ship La Concorde, taken off Martinique in 1717. A fine, Nantes-built vessel, 200 tons, perfect for my needs. I renamed her Queen Anne's Revenge, a joke about my privateering days that few understood. This ship would make me legendary. I armed her with 40 guns, more than most naval vessels carried. Her black sails stuck fear into any merchant who saw them. But it was how I used her that mattered. I'd approach openly, letting them see exactly who was coming. The sight alone usually got us what we wanted, without firing a shot. My crew? A mixed lot. English, French, African freedmen, escaped slaves. I treated them better than most merchant or naval captains did. We shared prizes equally, voted on important decisions. Every man had a voice and a fair share. That's why they followed me, why they kept my secrets. Would you hear how I built my reputation? How I made the name Blackbeard synonymous with terror, while actually shedding less blood than most pirates? The story becomes both darker and more cunning from here. Queen Anne's Revenge made me what I became. Let me tell you about the ship that would strike terror into the hearts of all who saw her black sails on the horizon. 40 guns we mounted on her, 18-pounders that could shatter a merchant ship's hull at range. But it was rarely the guns that won our prizes, it was the fear of them. I developed what you might call a theatrical approach to piracy. Picture it. Our black sails appearing at dawn, smoke already wreathing my face from the fuses woven into my beard, glass bottles of powder hanging from my bandoliers, creating an eerie mist around me. I'd stand at the rail where they could see me clearly, a demon figure straight from their nightmares. "I am Edward Teach," I'd roar across the water. "Surrender now, and I give you my word as a gentleman that not a soul will be harmed. Resist." Here I'd pause, letting their imaginations do my work for me. Most struck their colours before I finished speaking. My reputation grew with each capture. I made sure survivors spread stories about my fearsome appearance, but also about my mercy when crews surrendered peacefully. This was calculated. I wanted ships to give up without fighting. Dead men tell no tales, true, but they also can't spread your legend. The blockade of Charleston in 1718 showed my real power. With just a few ships, I sealed off one of the most important ports in British America. For a week, nothing moved without my permission. I took prominent citizens hostage, demanded and received a chest of medicine as ransom. Not gold, medicine. This confused people, added to my mystique. Let me tell you about my crew during this time. I chose men carefully, not just for fighting skill, but for their ability to play their parts in our grand theatre of terror. Some would act like madmen during boarding. Others would appear to barely be under my control. All understood that fear was our most powerful weapon. The taking of the Protestant Caesar off Honduras shows how it worked. As we approached, my men fired their pistols randomly, screamed like demons, made it appear they were drunk or insane. I stood silent at the rail, smoke curling around my face. They surrendered without firing a shot. Afterward, their captain said he feared his cargo of sugar would be destroyed. "My dear sir," I told him, "I am a businessman, not a vandal. Why would I destroy valuable cargo?" We lived well in those days. The prizes came easily. Spanish merchants, English traders, even Dutch ships heavy with cargo. But I was careful about which ships we took. Too many prizes from one nation would bring their navy down on us. Better to spread our attentions around, keep everyone nervous, but no one nation angry enough to mount a major expedition. My base at Ocracoke Inlet in North Carolina proved perfect. Hidden channels through the shoals that only we knew, friendly locals who appreciated our spending, and corrupt officials who could be bought. Governor Eden himself would share in our prizes for ensuring we had safe harbour. Would you hear how this golden time began to end? How politics and betrayal would turn success to ashes? The story becomes both more complex and more treacherous from here. By 1718, I had become more than just a pirate. I was a power in the colonies. Governors courted my favour, merchants paid for my protection, and my word carried weight from Charleston to Nassau. But with power comes enemies, and I made many during these days of glory. Let me tell you about the political game I played. Governor Eden of North Carolina was officially my enemy, but privately, our arrangement was simple. He got a share of our prizes. We got safe harbour and legal protection. I even bought a house in Bathtown, played the gentleman planter when ashore. Some days, I'd drink with the same merchants whose ships I might plunder if they ventured too far offshore. The taking of Gravelly Point shows how things worked then. We captured a French ship loaded with sugar and cocoa. Governor Eden's court declared it a legal seizure. After all, the ship had resisted. They hadn't, but who would contradict Blackbeard? The cargo was sold openly in Bathtown, everyone profiting and pretending it was all perfectly legal. But success breeds jealousy. Governor Spotswood of Virginia watched our operation with growing anger. North Carolina was making him look bad, offering pirates safe harbour while he worked to stamp them out. More importantly, Virginia's merchants were losing money, forced to pay protection or risk seizure. The grounding of Queen Anne's Revenge was no accident, though that's what the history books say. Let me tell you what really happened. I knew the game was changing. Too many enemies, too much attention. I deliberately ran her aground at Beaufort Inlet, taking the opportunity to cull my crew. Only my most trusted men were told which sloop would carry our real treasure. I took the King's pardon in June 1718, officially retiring from piracy. Governor Eden himself witnessed my oath. What few knew was that this was just another act in our ongoing play. I kept a small sloop, Adventure, for what I called trading voyages. Strange how many of these voyages ended with me finding abandoned cargo that I could legally claim. The politics of piracy were complex. Every colony wanted to stamp out piracy officially while privately profiting from it. I understood this game better than most, knew which officials to bribe, which to threaten, which to befriend. But Spotswood was different. He actually believed in law and order, couldn't be bought. Would you hear how this delicate balance began to collapse? How betrayal and ambition would turn the greatest pirate operation in the colonies into a deadly trap? The story becomes both more personal and more tragic from here. My greatest mistake was trusting in the system I'd helped create. I thought I had built something that would last, a network of corruption and profit that served everyone's interests. But I'd underestimated the change in the political winds, the growing power of those who wanted to end the golden age of piracy. November 22nd, 1718. The morning dawned calm at Ocracoke Inlet, but I knew something was wrong. Call it a pirate's instinct, or perhaps I'd simply survived too long by listening to the whispers of danger. We'd anchored Adventure in our usual spot, hidden behind the barrier islands, where the channels were too shallow for large warships. What I didn't know, couldn't know, was that Governor Spotswood had finally tired of our game. He'd hired Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the Royal Navy to end the legend of Blackbeard. 2 sloops were creeping up on us, using the pre-dawn darkness and their shallow draft to navigate the treacherous channels. Let me tell you about that last morning. I had only 15 men with me, a far cry from the 100 or more I commanded in my glory days. We'd been drinking the night before, celebrating a successful trading voyage. Some say this was my undoing, that drink made me careless. They don't understand that everything I did that morning was calculated, even as the trap closed around me. When we spotted Maynard's sloops, I knew immediately they were military. The way they moved, the precision of their approach, these weren't merchant vessels. I ordered the anchor cable cut rather than waste time hauling it in. We needed to reach deeper water where Adventure's superior handling could give us an advantage. I fired a broadside that swept Maynard's deck clear, or so it seemed. What I didn't know was that he'd ordered his men to hide below decks, making his sloop appear more damaged than it was. It was the first time someone had turned my own tactics of deception against me. The battle that followed has become legend, though few tell it right. We exchanged broadsides in the narrow channel, the sound of guns echoing off the barrier islands. When Adventure ran aground on a sandbar, I thought we were finished, but the same tide that trapped us would trap our pursuers. Maynard's sloop ran aground just yards from us. I saw what looked like a devastated ship, its deck empty save for a few bodies. "Strike your colours," I called out, "and I'll grant quarter." It was the same offer I'd made to countless merchants, but this time it was answered with a surprise that would prove fatal. The hatches burst open, and Maynard's men swarmed up, armed with muskets, pistols, and cutlasses. Now came the kind of close combat that would make this battle legendary. I fired my pistols, hurled my empty bottle, then drew my cutlass. The smoke from my beard fuses created a devil's halo around my head one last time. Would you hear how a legend met his end? How the most feared pirate in the Americas fought his last fight? The story reaches its climax here, in blood and gunsmoke and steel. They say I took 5 pistol balls and 20 sword cuts before I fell. The truth? I lost count. In close combat, with powder smoke thick around us and blood making the decks slippery. Who counts their wounds? What matters is that I fought as I had lived, on my own terms, refusing to surrender. My final duel with Maynard would become the stuff of legend. As our blades crossed, I saw in his eyes something I'd seen in many men's eyes before. Fear mixed with determination. But this time was different. This time, the fear wasn't enough. After my pistols were spent, and in the midst of that desperate sword fight, Maynard's men swarmed me from all sides. When my cutlass shattered against one attacker's skull, I drew my last knife. They say I fought like a demon. Perhaps I did. The smoke from my still-burning beard fuses created an otherworldly scene that survivors would describe for years to come. The killing blow came from behind, a sword slash that nearly severed my neck. Even then, I refused to fall. The legend says I circled Adventure's deck 5 times before I finally collapsed. Truth? I don't remember. In the heat of battle, with multiple wounds and the taste of blood in my mouth, who counts their final steps? Maynard took my head as proof of his victory, hung it from his bowsprit for the sail back to Virginia. My body they threw into Ocracoke Inlet, where some say it swam 3 times around the ship before sinking. A fine tale, though dead men tend to sink rather than swim. But let me tell you what they found when they searched adventure, far less treasure than they expected. Governor Spotswood had hoped to recover vast riches to justify his expedition. Instead, they found mainly sugar, cocoa, and everyday trade goods. The real treasure? Well, a pirate keeps some secrets even after death. My crew met various fates. Some were hanged, others took the king's pardon and vanished into the growing colonies. A few, they say, knew where the real treasure was hidden, but took that secret to their graves. The stories of buried Blackbeard treasure would spawn countless searches over the centuries. Governor Eden faced accusations of collaborating with pirates, but survived politically. Spotswood got his victory, but not the treasure he'd hoped for. Maynard got his promotion, but complained for years that he never received proper compensation for ending my reign. They tried to end my legend by displaying my severed head, but instead made it grow larger. Stories spread that my headless body swam around the ship, that my skull was made into a punch bowl, that my ghost haunts Ocracoke and Bathtown. Each tale added to the mystery, made the legend of Blackbeard larger than the man had ever been. What's my real legacy? Not the buried treasure that never existed, not the exaggerated tales of cruelty, not even the strategic innovations in warfare that others would copy. No, my legacy is in showing how reputation itself is power. I took fewer lives than most pirates of my era, claimed fewer prizes than many others, yet my name became synonymous with piracy itself. Would you know the truth about Blackbeard? I was neither the demon of legend nor the romantic hero of later tales. I was a man who understood that fear is the cheapest weapon, that reputation can be more powerful than reality, that sometimes the greatest power lies in what people believe about you rather than what you actually do. They hunt for my treasure still, on islands, in coves, beneath the waters of the Carolina coast. They don't understand that my real treasure wasn't gold or jewels. It was the freedom to live by my own rules, to be master of my own fate, if only for a brief time. The golden age of piracy died with me, or near enough. The colonial powers would no longer tolerate independent operators like myself. The system of corruption and cooperation I'd helped build would be dismantled. Pirates would become criminals rather than unofficial privateers, hunted rather than secretly supported. But the legend, that lives on. In books, in films, in tales told around campfires on Carolina beaches. Each generation reinvents Blackbeard for its own needs. Sometimes villain, sometimes hero, always larger than life. Remember me not as the bloodthirsty demon of legend, nor as the romantic hero of fiction, but as a man who understood power in all its forms. The power of fear, of reputation, of knowing when to fight and when to create the illusion of fighting. In the end, that understanding was my greatest treasure.